I'm a trader kind of that's always traded off the noise in the crowd, from the pit trading days where it's just you trade based on order flow to trading based on kind of gut instincts or your tape reader, that kind of stuff. So I've never paid much attention to technical studies. I've never paid much attention to anything fundamental. It's, I'm an efficient market theorist. If it's trading there, then it must be what it is, and all the news is known. So, there's nothing to, everything's already priced in. But a lot of people don't trade that way. A lot of people don't invest that way. There's $100 trillion invested in the bond market and the stock market. And a lot of people really rely on a different set of fundamentals to make their decision. What if those numbers were all made up?
So
what would that do to the integrity? What would that do to the integrity of the marketplace if a CEO came out and said, you know what, this quarter, our CFO shows us losing 22 million, but on back of the envelope, I think we really made about 22 million. And
so, I think you have to make some distinctions here. I think when it comes to the numbers that are reported by companies, quarterly reports,
okay,
I think that if those numbers were made up, that's a huge problem. We've seen that problem many times. It's called accounting fraud. It's called Enron. It's called.
Okay, I agree. Sure.
But I think when it comes to the government data, which I think is kind of where this conversation ends up right now because of the recent firing of that one person from the jobs report or whatever. So I spent this topic is interesting for a few reasons. When I was writing my book some years ago, one of the many things that I sort of dug into was government data. And specifically, one, to sort of a stab at the question you're asking, which is, are these numbers even worth a damn? And then even if they are worth a damn, are they measuring something that actually is indicative of anything?
Yeah, but whether or not the numbers are worth a damn is not the discussion here.
Okay.
The numbers, whether they're worth a damn, is not what this discussion's about. The discussion's about, we can argue till the cows come home whether they're worth anything. But the question is the number accurate? Is the number fair? Is it real? Doesn't matter if it's worth anything. Is the number real? Like,
and I guess what I'm getting at, is I think that the number is consistently real in an inaccurate way. How does that for a bullshit answer?
That's fine. You can say, the number is consistently real in an inaccurate way. That's still completely subjective because that's your opinion that it's an inaccurate way. But, is the number real? That's all I want to know. Is the number real?
Define real.
Well, the way that is the number using the same calculations, using the same math that we've used forever, that is standard practice. Okay. Is that number real, or was that number fudged or made up? That's what I mean.
Meaning, is it real in the sense, is it derived from some collected information about pricing or so about
that is consistent? That is consistent. Or is it just fabricated
in a conference room in Washington, D.C.? That's
exactly. Is it Bernie Madoff making up a number, or is this the same way that we've been calculating this number? Going back as long as you can remember.
I do not believe the number is fabricated in a conference room in Washington, D.C. I believe.
Either do I.
Okay.
Because if you believe that the number was fabricated in a conference room in Washington, D.C., then you also have to believe, just as an example, that the election really, the 2020 election really was fraud. Like that's the same type of thing.
And we didn't land on the moon.
Everything. The earth is flat. Everything. It's just
JFK Jr. is playing golf in Bora Bora.
Of course he is. But the point being is that there comes a point when you have to, when you get a room full of smart people, at what price is the integrity of those people? Let me give you an example here of Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary. When he was in the private sector working for Soros or whoever else he's working for, and getting paid billions of dollars or whatever it was, there's no chance that they would have ever made an investment in something where they thought the numbers were rigged or false. In other words, they would have gone to the mats to fight that. Okay. However, explain to me how, as soon as you get to Washington, you can accept a senile old man saying, you know what, I don't like those numbers. They're not real. They're fake. And then all of a sudden, but you don't defend those numbers. You basically come out and say, you know what, those numbers did look a little weird. Like, that is the most fucking ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And then we're sitting around and we're making it like it's not important. And yet people will be like, oh yeah, well, it was just fake, so we'll just buy them anyway, whatever it is. It's like so ridiculous. It doesn't even, there's no logic to it whatsoever. Smart people do not act that way. It's almost as saying, you know what? Bernie Madoff made up every single trade he ever did. Okay. He made up every single thing. And somebody there goes, well, even though he made it up, it could have been real trades. Like that's what it is.
That's a great metaphor. And so, and I guess for me, this is a commentary on power, because if Bernie Madoff had consolidated power and had sort of become so politically dominant as Donald Trump has become as the president of the United States, the reason you're getting these answers that you're correctly viewing as, profanely preposterous, the reaction is incomprehensibly idiotic.
Yeah,
is only because of the power of power, right? If Donald Trump hadn't consolidated his position over the last, 9 years, 10 years, to have this sort of absolute position of power, because obviously it's the only possible explanation. It's like the dictator syndrome.
So are you telling me, but it's not the dictator syndrome, Dylan, because the dictator syndrome, if you do this in Russia, you are going to get thrown off the top of a building. Okay, there's a big difference. What?
If you do what? If you say the numbers are not real?
No. If you question Putin, okay, right. If you question the integrity of Putin, okay, you are going to get thrown out of a 32nd floor building out the window, and you're dead, or you're going to get poisoned. Yeah, whatever it is, you're dead. You're dead in a matter of hours, days, whatever it is. Okay, you're freaking dead. We don't do that in the U.S. We don't kill you. We don't kill billionaires who get appointed to jobs. Like, if you're the Treasury Secretary and you don't have the backbone to stand up to something that you know is patently false, how can you possibly look in the mirror and say you're a person? How are you a man? How are you anything? How do you even exist? How do you wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I think I'm doing a good job? How do you tell your kids, you know what, you got to be truthful. You got to be honest. You got to work hard. How do you say that? How do you do anything? How do you look anybody in the eyes?
So so this is a referendum on Bessent, on the cabinet, basically.
Well, Trump is a criminal. Everybody knows that. Okay, he's a convicted felon. So you're not going to change Trump, but the people you put around, even if they're not felons or criminals or whatever else, you have to trust that they have at least an ounce of integrity. I don't even blame Trump, believe it or not, because this is who he is. He is a pathological liar, and he's a criminal, and he doesn't care. So you can't blame Trump, because this is who you got. You have to blame the people around him, the Pam Bondis of the world, the Scott Bessents of the world, the Howard Lutnicks of the world, because for some reason, these people, unless they've always been like this and I didn't know it, they just decided to lie for him, which makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense. It's not the way good people, good souls, humans react. You're never going to change Trump. He is what he is. So forget him. But everybody else, there's no way that everybody else can act like this. There's no way that not a single person has a backbone. There's no freaking spines in Washington. Doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry.
But the thing that I'm thinking about is when he was picking his cabinet, you were the one was we were saying, oh, you know, this.
Yeah, I said pick the people that you like.
And he said, you said, I'm like, everyone's like, why is he doing this? And you're saying the reason he's doing this is because he's filtering for loyalty.
Okay, I'm going to give you a different example. Dylan, I really like you and I want you to come work for us, okay? Because I think you're going to make Tasty better. You make the network better. But you happen to have been there when I killed somebody last weekend, okay? I shot him in cold blood, all right? Threw him in the garbage. Shot him in cold blood, threw him in the garbage. You saw the whole thing. Okay.
Breaking Bad.
Okay. Now they come and they go, what'd you see, Dylan? I just say, I want to know how far, you know, are you going to be willing?
But isn't that exactly what this is? Isn't that exactly what
I don't think you'd be. I think at some point
I would not be, but I also wouldn't be selected for Trump's cabinet. I'm just saying I think that extreme nature of your example, that actually is you're answering your own question, because you're like, how can you sit there and be like, yeah, you know, maybe you're right, maybe these numbers are made up in a conference room, you know, never mind. We'll just.
I mean, it's hard to lie for your own kids, but I can understand possibly protecting, you know, one of your own children, whatever. You do what you got to do. But come on, Dylan, I am not going to take a bullet.
Me. It's not, but it's not you and me. I'm saying the people Trump selected for his cabinet are loyal at the level that they would lie for him about anything.
Well, it's obvious, but then that begs the next question. How do you trust? What can you trust going forward? So now it begs the question, I mean, is Tim Cook on the payroll? The payroll just being,
the loyalty.
That's right. Is Jeff Bezos on this? Is Mark Zuckerberg on this? Are all these, because Trump is attracted to dollars. That's all he cares about is money. So are all these guys now, all these, soon to be trillionaires, all right? Are they all on the payroll? Is everybody on the freaking payroll? Except.
I think so.
That's crazy. That's ridiculous. And if that's the case, we are totally fucked.
I mean, I think so, because I think that everybody basically is like, no one wants to have Trump as an enemy. And so even if they disagree, they're like, first of all, they're like, I hope he just doesn't notice that I'm in the building. And we'll just ride it out, and we'll just try to get behind it. We'll just try to stay out of the line of fire. And then if we come into the line of fire, we'll say whatever we have to say to fall in line. I mean, but here's the thing, here's a bizarre way to look at this, so forgive me, but there's a version of this that is, it's almost like everybody knows what they're doing. So it's like saying, well, the jobs number might actually just be made up. But everybody knows that you don't really think that the jobs number might just be made up. Everybody knows that you're lying because of your need to keep your job close to the president. So in other words, it's not as damaging as you might think it could be, because everybody's in on the joke, if that makes any sense. Like, everybody knows that the number is not made up. Everybody knows that you're saying the number is made up only because of your need for proximity to the president. And so it's not as damaging as you might suggest for that reason.
Okay. And then so you're saying that we're supposed to read through the lines, because when you have somebody that's a known, when somebody doesn't know the difference between right and wrong and truth and lies, that we have to forgive them and just accept the good part of whatever they do, whatever that may be.
No. This is just a game of it. When you live in a house with a lunatic, and that lunatic owns the house, and you're a child and you live in a house with a lunatic, you have to do everything that you can to simply try to adapt to survive the lunacy. Because you can't throw the lunatic out of the house. You can't move out of the house. And so you develop coping mechanisms having to do with either isolating yourself in other parts of the house, hoping not to get noticed, or cooperating with the lunatic's lies in public as a way to maintain your safety.
So we're a society that needs to walk on eggshells to survive. And that's acceptable to 50% of
No. But 50% of the population didn't vote for this person.
30%, whatever. Yeah, 30%. Do you see the longer term implications that this can have if every single government statistic, if every single election, if everything that you don't like is immediately rejected as this is rigged, this is false? I mean, it's dangerous enough that somebody who's an election denier wins the presidency. It's just as scary as somebody that is a statistical denier that literally can't do math.
This man used a Sharpie to change the direction of a hurricane on live television using a National Weather Service map.
You can't teach stupid, but there was a very funny Borowitz article this morning from the New Yorker who basically described Trump's ability to do math and how dangerous, how incredibly stupid he is when it comes to trying to figure out any kind of a math equation, and how scary it is that that he actually even has that he can even talk about numbers, because he can't add or subtract or multiply or do anything when it comes to numbers. And it's mind blowing. But getting back to the integrity of the markets, I'm a trader. Okay. And I personally don't care, but I'm in the minority. I'm in the 1% that don't care about. I'm an efficient market person. I believe that as soon as the number comes out, or whatever else, it's already built into the price. There's nothing you can do, blah, blah, blah. It's all over. But how far does this extend? Does this mean that Elon Musk can continue with the ridiculousness of, hey, someday Tesla's going to be worth $20 trillion, or someday, maybe 2 quarters from now, we do this or whatever, we make, we go from a loss to a profit, like where does any of this stop? Like the whole, one of the reasons the markets are such a incredible ecosystem is because the massive amount of capital out there and the massive amount of liquidity creates this incredible efficiency. But the efficiency needs some foundation. There has to be truth. Here, I'll give you an example. I grew up in this business as a pit trader in the S&P pit and in the S&P option pit. And for 20 years, just about 20 years. And we didn't have any electronics back then. So every single trade I made for 20 years, probably, I'm going to guess 1 million trades. Every single trade was made with somebody else. Like I trade with you, all done on hand signals. So, right, I sell you 100, I sell you 50, I sell you 1, I sell you 5, whatever it is. Everything's done on hand signals. Sold, buy, the whole deal. We lived our life in screaming and yelling and hand signals.
Billions of dollars.
Literally billions of dollars, with 400 guys screaming at the exact same time, all doing hand signals. Every single trade cleared the next day. I mean, occasionally there'd be a confusion over, was that a 1 or a 10, or was that a buy versus sell, whatever it is. But for the most part, every single trade in the hundreds of billions of dollars cleared, because everybody had integrity. Otherwise, you were thrown out on the street. There were a couple of grifters. Maybe in all the years I was down there, in 20 years, there's probably 5 grifters. Those guys got thrown out the street, ended up in jail, whatever it was. But they got thrown out. Everybody else, the thousands, tens of thousands of people, unbelievable integrity. Win, lose, draw, whatever. Fast forward. We don't have an ounce of integrity in Washington right now. And again, It's not just Trump. It's the people that defend him, that lie for him.
Don't you think that, I mean, Trump is the most extreme example of the corruption and decay of integrity in the people around him?
Yeah, but he's the leader of the free world.
Don't you think that the Biden, don't you think it's bigger than Trump? I guess is my concern. I don't you think that the decay, that covering up I'm not trying to do a what about, I'm not trying to distract. I think Trump is uniquely catastrophic. I'm not diminishing that. But I would say yes and, not yes but. Yes and part of the reason Trump even got in is because the Democratic Party was so arrogant and abusive in the way it used the White House that it incentivized a part of the population to basically say, F me, F you.
Yeah, don't confuse arrogance and incompetence with criminality. That's the difference.
Okay.
There's a big difference between, I have seen arrogant people, I have seen egotistical people, and I have seen plenty of incompetent people. Okay. But there is a giant difference between all that and people who are criminals and people who are fraudulent. And that's where we draw the line. That's the difference. It's intent. And I think that's really the key. And now I'm one of these people that don't believe that Donald Trump knows the difference. I think the lines are so blurred for him that he thinks whatever he says, he has a Putin complex, and whatever he says, he thinks is true. And therefore, I don't believe he can tell the difference between right and wrong. He does not know the difference between right and wrong. He doesn't know the difference between a truth and a lie. That's why Trump doesn't bother me nearly as much as all the people that defend him. The people that defend him are way worse because they have to know better.
I totally agree. I'm just thinking they're doing that job because they believe that it is in their self-interest to have a high social status and get money. And they're willing to do anything, including to cooperate with and empower this lunatic in order to keep the job. That basically they're willing to forfeit the integrity of the United States for what they perceive to be their own personal career advancement.
So if you are a billionaire, which I assume, I've heard Scott Bessent's a billionaire. I don't know that for a fact, but assume he's a billionaire.
But a few $100 million is enough money to get you a piece of pizza.
Okay, whatever. Let's say he's whatever. They say he's a billionaire, 500 million, who cares? Whatever it is. So you're going to sell your soul to the devil? You're a billionaire. You're selling your soul to the devil for what? So your legacy is that you're a complete piece of shit. That's your legacy after working your entire life to get a reputation that you are to build a legacy for yourself and your family and everything else. You're going to sell it all out, okay, to be remembered as a piece of garbage.
But I mean, obviously, they don't perceive it the way you're describing it. First and foremost,
how could they not? They don't know. You're telling me that all these people don't know the difference from right from wrong. What are the three weapons of the devil? I don't know. I'm not a good devil person. Okay.
Money.
All right.
Women.
Okay.
And power. And I believe this is a situation where power, which I think is the most persuasive, the most attractive, the most seductive of the devil's instruments, overwhelms people. I think that people get so seduced by the influence and the attraction of power, and then they create a story for themselves that is a delusional story that they're helping that they're saving America. I would defy you to find anyone who's ever been the president of the United States, or anybody who's been a senior cabinet member or chief of staff, let's say the top 50 executives in the government, whether it's whatever the title is, chief of staff, treasury secretary, blah, blah, blah. I bet you if you ask every single one of them, they would tell you that they devoted their time in Washington, D.C. to helping and saving America. There's not a single one of them that would say, oh, I knew we were screwing America, but I thought it was good for my career.
Oh, I don't think any of them necessarily think they're screwing America. But they all recognize the difference from right and wrong. I don't think it's possible that you can assemble a team of people that can't tell the difference between right and wrong.
But this team of people that was assembled I don't disagree. They may know the difference between right and wrong, but they don't know the difference between right and wrong, but they also know they're in the room with someone that they cannot disagree with, even if they believe what is being stated is wrong. Like that, they knew coming in. It's not like, oh, I discovered you murdered somebody last week and now I'm not going to tell. It's like, I know you're a murderer up front. Everybody knows you're a murderer when I interview for the job. And one of the preconditions of the job is like, listen, I'm going to give you a lot of money, Dylan. We're going to give you lots, put you on big stages, and you'll be seen by millions and blah, blah, blah. However, I am a murderer, and you're just going to have to help me cover that up.
So if you
I think that like when Lutnick, when you interviewed with Donald Trump to join his cabinet 9 months ago, it was everybody knew who he was.
So if you were hired as a trader for Bernie Madoff and you were sitting there and you actually never made a trade, but you saw the returns and the money coming in and the articles written about the firm, and you're sitting there going, well, this is awfully strange because we're one of the largest S&P 500 traders in the world, but we've actually never made a trade in the S&P 500 pit. And this is kind of a strange thing. I mean, now, do you continue?
No, but remember, there are two divisions because they had the market making business.
No, I understand that. I'm not getting into the details of what, but they did. I'm just making a fun little thing.
Okay.
You're a trader. Now, you've never made a trade and you know that something is wrong. Okay. Do you shut up and take your $1 million a year or $2 million a year, whatever he's paying you and knowing that this is a fraud, but you actually haven't seen anything. You haven't been on the inside. You're paid $1 million or $2 million a year to be the head trader and you're not getting any order flow, but you're sitting there and you're like, man, we're doing great. I'm not sure how, but we're doing great. Something doesn't smell right. You know how there's lots of different ways they busted Bernie Madoff, but the first guys that turned him in, that it came from the trading floor.
In Boston.
Well, they came and they said, because he said, we're trading all these, in order to trade whatever, $100 million, you have to have a certain amount of order flow. It has to go through somebody, but nobody could find a broker that was actually filling a single order for that.
I know.
And there was no order. And in the pit, every guy was going, where is this guy routing these orders to? We haven't seen a single order. And so they tried to back into it. They're like, what the hell's going on here? This guy says he's dominating the S&P.
He's the biggest fish in the pond and no one can see the fish.
Every single broker goes, I don't have his business. Nobody has his business. Okay, no trader ever made a trade with him. Nobody even knew. It was all a scam.
Jeffries or Hamburton Quist, one of these little old banks, does something everybody gets a look, but the biggest trader in town, no one's getting a look.
Yeah, but if you were that trader, do you say something? Because what you're saying is that the $1 million or $2 million is you don't actually know that he's stealing everything. You just think he is, but you don't actually know. So you just take your money and just shut up.
Yeah, you're like I'm just a lowly above my pay grade.
Okay, I mean, I don't think that's the case for 99% of the people.
But I also don't think that's a metaphor because while I could sort of back my way into an excuse for, why the Madoff trader might not raise an alarm, but that doesn't, to me, justify a Lutnick or a Bessent. I mean, it's not above their pay grade. Unrelated, do you know that the penthouse at my building in New York years ago, the guy that owned the penthouse of my building in Tribeca years ago, There was a guy who had figured out how to basically, you know how they, I don't know if they probably still do this, but they for sure used to do this, where they take bonds and strip them into parts, like where you have all like principal payments and interest payments. Like I forget, there's some name for it where it's like a 30-year bond becomes basically 31 pieces, where it's a one payment, 30 principal payments and one interest payment.
Okay.
It's like IO, PO, it's some sort of a thing.
Okay.
And he figured out how basically to buy the parts, the bond parts.
Okay.
We buy 30 years worth, 30 different chunks of payments, plus one chunk of interest payment. And then he would rack it in, and basically it'd be like, it's like the equivalent of like trading in 4 quarters for $1. Like he would take all the bond parts and then trade it in for a bond, but there was some price discrepancy that he'd figured out in the
it sounds like arbitrage to me. Okay.
Made a fortune.
Okay.
Joe Jack, that was his name, was a big fraud.
What was the fraud? What was the fraud?
The fraud was that there was no arbitrage. There is no arbitrage. There's that the value of the bond is the value of the bond. That he was marking, that he was based, that it was he was marking up or marking down, whatever it was, to create the appearance of this incredibly profitable trade that he was repeating over and over. My point is, when people figure out a way to make a lot of money, they're not real quick to call the cops or the compliance department.
Okay. I was
don't
merely
know, that
giving
still
you.
doesn't explain why Besant and Lutnick I think are more like abused children who are afraid of their father.
It's way deeper than that. It's not just those two. There was, I think it was the assistant commerce secretary, when the number came out in the morning on Bloomberg, she said, well, the underlying jobs are pretty good. It's just the overall number wasn't that good. And then later on in the afternoon, after Trump made his statement, she came back out and said, no, the numbers were rigged. Sorry about that.
Bad numbers.
They were good numbers in the morning, but they were bad numbers in the afternoon. It's,
my biggest concern is what's the message? The world never considered that in any given 4-year period that America could elect a lunatic that will basically destroy the integrity of everything. I mean, I just don't know.
I am not so sure I agree with that. I think that as a kid that grew up in the Nixon era, kind of remembering that whole, because I was in high school then, remembering that whole thing, I thought he was a lunatic. And I can appreciate a lunatic in the White House. I mean, I can see that happening. But I can see a criminal because he was a criminal. No question about it. So I can see it happening, but not somebody, but we addressed it. I can't believe that we can't address this. Like, that's what bothers me. It's not, for some reason, it's not addressable. It's like it's
any intervention.
It's accepted. Everybody had the spine, the balls to step up and say, hey, you know what? Every Republican in 1972 or whatever year it was said, hey, you know what? This is ridiculous. Get out of here. You're going to be resign or be impeached, whatever it is. And to everybody, when you did something wrong, everybody had at least enough integrity to step up. What happened? We don't have that anymore. It's crazy. It's crazy. If you asked right now and you asked, 50 Republican senators or 51 Republican senators, are these numbers rigged? 48 would say, well, Trump said they were, so sure.
I know.
It's insane. It's insane. It's freaking insane. All right.
To tell you, I mean, I don't even know.
Oh, you're an Italian now. This is normal behavior for Italy.
This is just, what's the big deal?
Exactly.
Have a glass of wine, relax.
Exactly. I don't even know why
Luciano, you get so worked up.
Exactly.
If you're not subscribed, subscribe right here. And if you want to meet me and the team in person at our next live event, hit the link at the top of the description.